Do you ever wonder what happened to the Canadian sweets we grew up loving? Those corner store treasures and seasonal favorites may be gone, but the memories still taste just as sweet. Let's take a look at 11 Canadian treats we'd all love to see back on the shelves. Few snacks scream old-school carnival vibes like Lucky Elephant Pink Candy Popcorn. Sold in a box with the cheerful pink elephant mascot, this treat turned ordinary popcorn into a crunchy, candy-coated delight. The pink glaze wasn't just eye-catching, it gave the popcorn a sweet, nostalgic kick that kids couldn't resist. This wasn't a movie theater buttered popcorn. It was playful, sugary, and messy in the best way possible. The candy coating gave every handful a crackly crunch, with just enough sweetness to keep you coming back for more. And let's not forget the toy surprise that sometimes came inside, making it even more exciting for kids. While it may have faded from the mainstream, Lucky Elephant Pink Candy Popcorn lives on in the memories of Canadians who grew up in the mid-20th century. It's tied to fairs, school fundraisers, and simple joys. For many, it wasn't just a snack, it was a little pink box of happiness. If you ever had to smack a candy bar against the table to eat it, chances are it was Mackintosh's Toffee. Wrapped in its iconic tartan-patterned packaging, this hard block of caramelized toffee was as much an activity as it was a sweet treat. Breaking it apart became a ritual that made the experience feel special. The flavor itself was rich and buttery, with a slow-melting sweetness that lingered long after the bite. Unlike soft caramels, Mackintosh's Toffee challenged your jaw with its firm texture, rewarding you with an old-fashioned taste that felt like pure nostalgia. It wasn't flashy or fancy, but it had a comforting simplicity that people adored. For Canadians, Mackintosh's Toffee was more than candy. It was tradition. Passed down from parents to kids, it held a sense of continuity, the kind of treat that connected generations. Though it's harder to find today, its name alone brings back memories of tartan wrappers, cracked pieces, and that unmistakable toffee crunch. Among Canada's oldest chocolate bars, Palo Mine had history baked into every bite. First crafted in 1920 by Ganong Brothers, it stood out with a rustic charm that made it feel both old-fashioned and comforting. The name itself, Palo Mine, gave it a friendly, familiar touch, like a candy bar that was always by your side. Inside, you'd find a fudge-like center made with brown sugar loaded with peanuts, all coated in dark chocolate. It wasn't just sweet, it had depth, balancing nutty crunch with a smooth, melt-in-your-mouth layer of chocolate. That combination gave it a reputation as a hearty bar, a little more substantial than your average treat. What made Palo Mine truly special was its staying power. For over a century, it kept its classic recipe alive, surviving candy fads and shifting tastes. While it eventually faded from shelves, it remains a beloved piece of Canada's confectionery history, reminding us of a time when candy bars had character and heart. When it comes to candy bars that feel distinctly Canadian, Coffee Crisp tops the list. Introduced in the 1930s, it quickly became a household favorite with its light, crispy layers and gentle coffee flavor. It wasn't too sweet, it wasn't too bitter, it hit that perfect middle ground. The magic was in the texture, thin wafers stacked with a foamed, coffee-flavored filling, all wrapped in milk chocolate. Unlike heavy chocolate bars, Coffee Crisp felt airy, giving you that satisfying crunch without overwhelming your taste buds. It became the go-to choice for people who wanted something more refined than caramel or nougat. Coffee Crisp's legacy is simple. It tastes like Canada. Advertisements even leaned into the catchphrase, "Makes a nice light snack," perfectly capturing its charm. For generations, it has been a bar that bridges young and old, coffee lovers and chocolate fans. More than candy, it's a cultural staple, one that proudly carries the Canadian sweet tooth. Ask any Canadian kid about their favorite movie snack, and chances are Swedish berries will pop up. These little red berry-shaped gummies became a staple in corner stores and theaters across the country, offering a burst of fruity sweetness that kept people coming back. They were chewy, vibrant, and packed with nostalgia. What made Swedish berries special was their simplicity. Unlike sour gummies or complicated candy mixes, they were straightforward, just bright berry flavor in a gummy that stuck to your teeth in the best way possible. Kids would pour them into their popcorn at the movies, or trade them in the schoolyard for other Maynard's favorites like wine gums and Sour Patch Kids. Though still available, Swedish berries remain one of those quintessential Canadian candies that never lost their charm. They're part of a lineup that gave Maynard's its reputation as a candy giant. For many Canadians, opening a bag feels like stepping right back into childhood. Soft, creamy, and wrapped in a golden foil, Jersey Milk was the kind of chocolate bar that spoke to Canadian simplicity. First introduced in 1924, it carried the slogan, "The Standard of Quality." And for decades, that's exactly what it represented. No gimmicks, no fancy fillings, just smooth milk chocolate that melted perfectly in your mouth. Jersey Milk stood out because it was so straightforward. In a market crowded with caramel, nougat, wafers, and peanuts, this bar was unapologetically plain. But that was its strength. Sometimes you didn't want bells and whistles, you just wanted pure, silky chocolate. Its old-fashioned feel gave it a timeless quality that parents and grandparents passed down to kids. When news broke in 2025 that Jersey Milk was being discontinued in Canada, fans were heartbroken. It marked the end of a 100-year run, leaving only memories of unwrapping that familiar gold foil. For many Canadians, Jersey Milk wasn't just a chocolate bar, it was comfort in its simplest form. Sometimes the best treats come from the simplest ideas, and Clodhoppers proved it. Born in Winnipeg during the late 90s, these bite-sized clusters mixed graham crackers with fudge and coated them in chocolate. Crunchy, sweet, and a little messy, they quickly became a Canadian favorite. What made them special was how addictive they were. Each cluster had the perfect balance of crunch and creamy chocolate, making them impossible to stop at just one. They felt homemade, almost like something a friend would whip up in their kitchen, yet they carried a store-bought convenience that made them easy to grab and share. Though Hershey's briefly produced them, they eventually disappeared from Canadian shelves, leaving fans heartbroken. For many, Clodhoppers weren't just candy, they were a nostalgic reminder of after-school snacks, movie nights, and gas station hauls. Even today, Canadians still hope for their return, proving that sometimes the simplest sweets leave the biggest mark. Few candies carry as much maritime pride as chicken bones. Created in 1885 by Canning Bros in New Brunswick, these cinnamon-flavored pink candies hid a chocolate center that surprised first-time tasters. At Christmas time, they became a must-have, filling homes with tradition and nostalgia. The sharp cinnamon exterior offered a spicy kick, while the bittersweet chocolate inside softened the flavor, creating a balance that felt uniquely Canadian. They weren't just candies you popped one after another. They were savored, shared, and often tied to family gatherings during the holidays. More than just a treat, chicken bones became part of Atlantic Canadian heritage. They were sold year-round, but it was the winter season that cemented their place in culture. For many Canadians, cracking open a box of chicken bones isn't just about candy, it's about history, family, and the traditions that bring us back to simpler times. Back in the 1970s, one chocolate bar had Canadian kids hooked, the Wigwag. It stood out with its twisted, braided layers of caramel, all dipped in chocolate. It wasn't just about taste, it was about the fun of pulling apart those sticky caramel strands. The Wigwag was chewy, messy, and unforgettable. Unlike smoother, polished bars, it leaned into texture and playfulness, giving candy lovers a unique experience. Eating one was almost like an event. You'd either stretch out the caramel before biting in or dive right into the gooey center. Either way, it left an impression. Sadly, Wigwag bars were discontinued in the 1980s, leaving only fond memories. For many Canadians, it's one of those childhood treats that perfectly captures the flavor of the era, carefree, fun, and a little sticky. Even today, people reminisce about Wigwag as the ultimate retro candy that deserves a comeback. Nothing says Canada like maple, and Kerr's Maple Kisses bottled that flavor into a chewy candy. Wrapped in iconic orange and black Halloween-style wax paper, these sweets brought the taste of maple syrup into schoolyards and trick-or-treat bags for decades. They were chewy, sticky, and unapologetically bold in flavor. While some kids traded them away for chocolates, others couldn't get enough of that rich maple kick. Each bite felt like a taste of Canadian heritage, reminding us of sugar shacks and maple festivals. Kerr's eventually stopped producing Maple Kisses, sparking waves of nostalgia among Canadians who grew up with them. More than just candy, they represented our country's most famous flavor in its simplest form. For many, losing Maple Kisses felt like losing a piece of Canadian identity wrapped in wax paper. Topping the list is one of Canada's most iconic and divisive treats, the cherry blossom. First introduced by Walter M. Loney Company in the late 1800s and later produced by Hershey Canada, this candy was instantly recognizable with its red and yellow box. Inside was a maraschino cherry surrounded by syrup, chocolate, shredded coconut, and roasted peanuts. The experience of eating one was messy but unforgettable. You'd bite in and be met with a burst of sweet syrup, chewy cherry, and crunchy bits all at once. It was unlike any other candy bar, with a bold flavor that made it either a love-it-or-hate-it kind of sweet. In 2025, Hershey's officially discontinued Cherry Blossom, sparking sadness across Canada. For over a century, it had been a quirky staple that set Canadian candy apart from the rest of the world. Love it or not, Cherry Blossom remains a piece of Canadian candy history, one that fans will always wish could return. And that wraps up our trip through the Canadian sweets we wish would make a comeback. If this nostalgic journey brought back some sweet memories, don't forget to give the video a like. Subscribe for more dives into Canada's history, culture, and the little things that made growing up here unforgettable. See you next time!